Hey guys, so today we are going to be looking at standard 8.LS4.1, which is analyze and interpret data for patterns in the fossil record that document the existence, diversity, extinction, and change in life forms throughout Earth's history. So basically it's going to be let's look at layers of rock and look at fossils and draw some conclusions about it. This is one of the easiest standards, and most of the time the questions are pretty straightforward without any tricks. Now, what I've noticed with this test is they are pulling this standard into some of the natural selection kind of questions and making you have to speculate why extinction events happened or why certain fossils became less prevalent or more prevalent. So let's take a peek at this. And before we do, I feel like I haven't said this in a while, but as far as these test taking strategies, take your time. These tests, I realize they are important, but it's just a standardized test. When you're my age, no one is going to care what you made on your 8th grade science TCAP test. No one's going to ask you. When I got hired for my job, no one asked me what I made on it. Okay, that wasn't even like a blip on their radar. So take some stress off yourself, take a deep breath, don't psych yourself out, and just know that sometimes it's more about knowing how to take these tests than the actual content that's on it. Say the questions in your head, read through the answers, make fun of them like I do, okay? And usually the ones that are terrible answers will stand out like a sore thumb. It's a lot easier to narrow down your answer choices and work your way through this. But be selfish. Worry about you and what works best for you. If you see other people getting done, forget about them. That's their deal. There's a good chance they may not have even tried or didn't care, or maybe that's just how they work. Maybe it's just like quick, they don't second guess it, and they're done. Forget about them. This is about you and your test, okay? So be selfish, take some time, do what you need to do, and let's work through this and review it real quick. So this is the main information that we need to look at here. And it's going to be again about our fossil record. It's the only real concrete link to the past and bit of evidence that we have. And unfortunately, it is super, super incomplete and will never be complete or perfect. The analogy I like to use is taking one of those nice, big, pretty World Book encyclopedia sets and giving it to a preschool, and the little children torturing it all year, stealing some of the books to take home for coloring books or pictures, pages getting ripped out for paper wad fights or to make paper airplanes, origami, be cut into snowflakes, you name it. Some kid taking like one and trying to flush it down the toilet, a few other ones burying them in the wood chips, just really, really tortured books. And then at the end of the year, the poor, sad remains being brought back together, and all those missing gaps and pieces of that encyclopedia set. That's kind of what our fossil record looks like, because not everything that dies turns into a fossil. It takes super specific circumstances to make fossils, and it doesn't always happen. Also, we're probably not going to be able to excavate and unearth every single fossil there is, and that's just something we have to deal with. We've also talked about plate tectonics, and with subduction zones, once the crust gets subducted and pulled back into the mantle and melted, you can't unmelt a fossil. Just doesn't happen that way. So we're never going to have a complete fossil record. It won't be perfect, but we can use it to make some guesses and at least have a little bit of evidence to back our guesses up about what happened in the past, what kind of creatures there were, what they looked like, the environment that was able to support them. So we mainly use this to guesstimate the ages of certain organisms and help date them. Now, when I say date, I don't mean like romantically take them out, bring them flowers, have a nice dinner. I mean like figure out how old they are, which is why when I say relative dating, I'm not talking about something that you're probably snickering about on the other side of your screen, because that's what always happens in class. relative in this case is not going to mean someone that's related to you. It's going to mean approximate, in the ballpark of, an estimate. So we look at the layers of rock and we kind of guesstimate something's age. We know that the lower layers are older, the upper layers are younger. And the analogy I use with this every time is those magazine subscriptions that you get, but you never ever actually read. You get the first one in January, it gets thrown in a corner. February gets thrown on top of it, so forth and so on. And at the end of the year, December, the newest one, is sitting on top, and January, the oldest one, is sitting at the bottom. So that's pretty much how this works. Old junk's at the bottom, new junk's at the top. And the fancy name for this is the law of superposition, which is a really fancy, weird name for old stuff bottom, young stuff top. This slide pretty much is what you'll see on your test. Something kind of in this ballpark. They usually don't get too fancy with this. So the layer that's the oldest, that is going to be this layer down here at the bottom. Layer that's the youngest, that's going to be the layer up here at the top. The fossil that's older, yellow spiral or orange blob, well, there are orange blobs up here. There are yellow spirals down here. Low is old, so yellow spiral. Which one's youngest, the black comb or the gray spike? Gray spike's farther up top. It's the youngest. These are usually pretty simple gimme questions that in the past haven't been too terrible, and there's usually 2 or 3 of them on the test. So don't psych yourself out and overthink these, and they're usually pretty easy. Let's look at the actual test that I gave you this year and pick those questions apart. Okay, first question is actually the first question. It says, the diagram represents a section of Earth that a paleontologist, a scientist who studies fossils, has been working for years. Which statement correctly describes the diagram? So let's look at the statements and start checking them off. First statement says, layers R and W contain fossils that are both types of plant species. So R. That is a swirly shell thing. It's going to look like some type of sea creature, not a plant. W. That's a leaf. That is a plant, so first option not looking too good. Second one. Layer W contains fossils of organisms that existed on Earth after the organisms found in layers U and R, which is basically saying layer W is younger than layers U and R. So W is up here at the top, U and R are down here below. That's looking pretty good so far, but let's look at the other two just to double check. We have layers W and U contain fossils that are animal species. W, again, is a plant, so not looking too good on that one. Layer U contains fossils of organisms that are older than the organisms found in layer R, which means U is going to have to be closer to the bottom than R, and that is not the case here. So option 2 is your correct answer. See, not so bad with these. Most of them are pretty straightforward, and let's be honest, that's not that tough of a question. You guys, you can do this. You got this. All right, next question we've got on this is 17. A canyon wall is shown. The rocks that make up the wall are layered. From the evidence in the picture, which statement is most correct about what the fossil record looks like in this location? So we have a semi-terrible black and white image here, but you can see the layers in the rock. Not super detailed or anything, but you can tell there are layers there. So let's look at our answer choices and see what they're wanting from us. The number of fossils would decrease as the layers accumulate. Well, I mean, there's no real evidence from this picture to kind of back that up, so let's keep looking. The types of fossils would be similar, but would show gradual structural changes, okay? That at least makes sense because the rock layers are in the same environment. So you would expect to see similar types of animals. You wouldn't expect it to go from a rattlesnake to a polar bear magically. And gradual changes, you might see them become larger or smaller or maybe some bone structure slightly changed. So, okay, that sounds very plausible. Third option, the types of fossils would stay exactly the same in every layer. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of the Grand Canyon, but it's pretty deep. So there are thousands, if not millions, of years of layers built into the Grand Canyon. So the odds of things staying perfectly identical are pretty slim, especially since just in recent years we have seen the Aberts and kaibab squirrels start to differentiate and become different, with natural selection driving that. So that one's not seeming too good. Fourth option, the number of fossils would rise and then immediately disappear. If the number of fossils gets higher and higher and higher and then just no more fossils ever, then that should mean that some type of major extinction event happened to where there were no more organisms to become fossils, which should technically mean that there are no organisms there now, and we also know that's just not true. So here, option 2 is definitely your correct answer and your best one to go with. Let's keep going. And the last question over the standard is actually the last question on the test. Says the graph shows the changes in the number of animal faunus living on Earth over time and how the faunus were affected by different extinction events. Which statement is correct about the changes in the faunus during one of these 5 major events? So if you have no idea what the word faunus mean, it tells you right here. It literally is just a fancy word for animal. You will see the word flora, typically with flora and faunus, and that flora means plants. So they're just fancy words for plants and animals. So don't let that freak you out or psych you out. It tells you exactly what it is. So let's take a peek at our picture here, and let's see, we are going to be describing changes due to extinction events. So we've got our little key with modern, Paleozoic, and Cambrian. And again, don't freak out if you don't know what that means. It's basically new, older, oldest. Because if you look back here with your label of millions of years before present, you've got Precambrian and Cambrian, so these are your older ones. Then it goes on up to modern times, and then we've got our number of fauna families. I always tell people check out the keys and the labels of the axes on their graphs before anything ever gets started. Answer choice 1, the end of the Devonian resulted in an increase in the number of Cambrian faunus. So end of the Devonian, which is right here, we are looking at a increase in Cambrian faunus. Yeah, no. Here's the high point of Cambrian, and we're starting to get to a very low point here, so not looking too good for that answer choice. Second one, the event at the end of the Cretaceous resulted in an increase in the number of Paleozoic faunas. So we'll find our Cretaceous, the event at the end of it, increase in Paleozoic. So right here, no, that's another decrease and drop off from what I'm seeing. So that one's not looking too good. Third answer choice. The event at the end of the Triassic resulted in the extinction of fewer faunus than in any other period. So the event at the end of the Triassic resulted in the extinction of fewer faunus than any other period. Well, looks like we didn't have any Cambrian ones to lose. Looks like Paleozoic to here stayed pretty consistent, and looks like from Triassic to here, looks like we even gained a few. So that one's a maybe right now. We'll check the last one, but so far that one's looking the best of the 3 answers that we've had. Fourth one, the event at the end of the Cretaceous resulted in the extinction of more faunus than any other period. So looking at the end of the Cretaceous. Well, there were no Cambrian ones, but starting here and going here, we see a little tiny bit of a loss. And then going from here, organisms. Right here of this one looks to be where we have the biggest decrease in species. So I'm going to rule that one out. So third option here is going to be your correct answer. So this is one where at least the chart accurately gives you what you need to figure out to answer these. There's not a lot of guesswork in here. It's just kind of look and check, look and check, look and check. And yes, it's kind of slow and time consuming, but it's the best thing to do. Always go through and check all 4 of your answer choices, even if you think you already know which one's the answer. It's better to be safe than sorry sometimes, because when it's laid out for you like this and it's all the information is here, even though when you first look at this, it looks like a complete and total hot mess, get those points. There's no need to miss a question just because you did not feel like dealing with this graph. I promise you, charts and graphs are not as scary as they seem sometimes, especially in these science tests. So just breathe when you see them, take you a moment, and it's going to be okay. And that's it. That's all I need to know on this standard. Hopefully you guys are finding these videos helpful and you're watching them, and hopefully you're taking some test taking strategies away from them, because honestly, I almost want you to take that more than the content, because the test taking strategies you can use forever, or at least until you're done with school permanently. And I miss you guys. I'm so proud of you getting close to graduation. I can't wait to see you guys and tell you congratulations, and hope you have a wonderful summer. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.